It's time for 41 is the Mic, a weekly Chiefs podcast with Nick Jacobs of KSHB 41 and Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. 41 is the Mic starts now.
Welcome, everyone, to 41 is the Mic. You couldn't be here for a better episode because we now know the divisional round matchups that are set. And here today, myself, Matt Derrick, Chiefs Digest. I'm here alongside divisional round enthusiast Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41.
That's right, Matt. I am very enthusiastic about the divisional round.
Doesn't get any better than this.
It is my 50th favorite day of the year.
Hey, we've been waiting for the real NFL season to start, Nick. And if you're a Chiefs fan, the preseason's over. The real season is here. We now know Chiefs will be taking on the Houston Texans. That'll be on Saturday, 3:30 p.m. to kick off at GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium. And I mean, Nick, this was not necessarily the matchup that I think everyone was expecting, because the bottom of the AFC playoff field was pretty wide open. And I honestly, I thought the Chargers were going to take care of business. They did not against the Houston Texans.
Sorry, just the disappointment in the tone of your voice right there. You're like, they did not.
They did not. Wasn't like I can say that prediction was close. Could have gone either way, because the Texans basically ran away with that game in the second half.
Yeah. The biggest thing I would say more than anything else is looking at that Texans-Chargers game. The Chargers had command early on in that game. CJ Stroud didn't look comfortable in that game until that 3rd and 16 when he was able to scramble outside the pocket there late in the second quarter and be able to throw that dart down the field to the wide open receiver. That's what sparked that team, and then that's when they got energized, and that's really when it stopped being a defensive battle and started being a football game at that point. And then Joe Mixon closed it out there towards the end and everything. And then obviously Herbert got rattled after a couple hits. He got rattled in that game, and the Texans defense was able to take advantage of it. I know some people have tried to paint the picture that it was a dominant performance by the Texans defense. I was like, I don't know about that, but part of it that I think people discredit is that the Chargers don't have a lot of receiving options, reliable receiving options. So when you're in playoff form and everything, like, you have Ladd McConkey, and Ladd McConkey stepped up and had an 86-yard touchdown on that one play. But there's just certain people you either need to have a certain mindset or certain mentality, and the Chargers didn't have a lot of those weapons on offense. And that's why whenever I've talked about it throughout the season, I'm like, the Chargers are a couple of receivers and tight end away from really being able to kind of have that impact. If they had somebody like a Brock Bowers at tight end, or some of the Chiefs receivers that had been with Herbert over a certain amount of time and not just 1 year, or they had other receivers like a Ladd McConkey, then I think they're in business in a game. But there's a lot more weapons Justin Herbert's going to need to be able to kind of go up against one of the top 4 teams in the AFC. But the scenario we had talked about, up until the Steelers had their free fall, we thought it was going to be Steelers-Texans, and the Texans were, potentially going to be the team coming to Kansas City. It's whenever that free fall went a little too far that you're like, oh, okay, well, now the Chargers will probably take over that, that spot. And then that's when we all kind of thought, with where the Texans had been and how much they'd struggled against the Chiefs and Ravens, that we kind of thought the Texans were kind of fading like the Steelers were.
Well, and, with that win, the Texans managed to move to 500 on the season outside of their own division. I mean, the South is not a good division, and they struggle. I mean, like I said, during the regular season, they went 5-6 outside their own division, 5-1 inside the division. I mean, that's the definition of a 500 team. I mean, they had one marquee win during the season. Early in the season, they were able to knock off Buffalo in Houston. It was a great win, but otherwise the rest of the schedule was just absolutely, and the rest of the season was just absolutely I mean, 500-ish or worse. I mean, the only reason they were even above a 500 team is because of playing in the AFC South. And the AFC South is not like a super conference. I mean, a division. I mean, in fact, even they went 5-1. I mean, the Chiefs, I think, would have gone 6-0 through the AFC South pretty easily, and much easier, I think, than they went through the AFC West. And I'm not, trying to be a Chiefs excuse or apologist or anything here, but yeah, Joe Mixon had a good day. Did not have this kind of day against the Chiefs a month ago. CJ Stroud had a good day. Didn't have that kind of game, a month ago. I mean, the Texans played extremely well, but you're talking about like Ladd McConkey. Justin Herbert throwing to Ladd McConkey was 9 of 14 for 197 yards and a touchdown. That's not stellar defense on Ladd McConkey.
Right. 100%.
But why did the Texans win? They won because they were able to get pressure on Herbert. They made him uncomfortable in the second half. I mean, I think some of it too was obviously Justin Herbert tried to, in my metaphor of sometimes saying he tries to get 14-point touchdowns. I mean, he was impressing a lot in that second half once they got behind, and just made mistakes that he doesn't normally make.
Yeah, but I mean, I hate to say it when it comes to playoff time, though. I don't know if has he won a playoff game yet? I don't think he has.
He is not. He is 0-2.
Yeah, so that, I mean, because the other one, that was that Jaguars game where they came from behind, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, had a commanding lead in that one and let it slip away. So, I mean, the Chargers had to me, a very good season. I thought they were potentially a playoff team. I wasn't a guarantee, but I thought they could make a run to it because Jim Harbaugh is a good coach.
Yeah,
he took them a long way, and obviously they've got some really good pieces for the future. But I was also kind of surprised just that this is a team that this year, Nick, really relied on running the football. They relied on their offensive line. They relied on getting rid of the ball quickly. I mean, the reason why Justin Herbert had a lot of success this year was that Jim Harbaugh asked him to be a bit of a game manager, and they got out of that against the Texans. I mean, they just got out of, all right, ball control, let's just move steadily down the field, and got desperate.
Yeah, something that is it's kind of hitting with me. If you look back 2 years ago, when the Chargers lost that one with Herbert, they lost an AFC South team that was the 4 seed. Chargers were the 5 seed. And here it happens all over again. That just blows my mind. Matt, I want to play a quick little game here real quick.
I love quick games.
Okay. So you remember whenever I did those breakdowns on the teams?
Against the playoff field?
Yeah, so I will tell you what the average was. I'm not including the last week because teams sat a lot of their players on all collectively, but I'm doing it up till the week 17. So not the week 18 games, but the week 17. Because I'm not going to include the Chiefs at Denver with the Chiefs backups. Like that's silly. But okay, I want you to tell me the score of the Chargers Texans game, and we'll kind of see where it does versus the average, if things held true or not.
Meaning,
so
I got a little confused there.
Oh no! So I'll just do it. Since I wanted to, that's my bad. So the Texans against the Bills, Chiefs, and Ravens, they were averaging 14.6 points. Scored 32 yesterday. So really exact opposite. And then they were giving up 26. So I'm going to be curious to see this week against the Chiefs what that point, if it still falls into the ballpark of what they were doing playoff-wise. Now, if you look at the Chargers were averaging 20.6 points against playoff teams, but giving up 21.5. So a lot less than what they should have and gave up a lot more than they normally do. But the interesting one that I felt kind of fit more of it, take the Steelers, right? Steelers were averaging against playoff teams. Steelers were averaging 15.6 a game. Scored 14. They were giving up 19 a game. But if you look at the Ravens are averaging This is what's eerie about this. The Ravens were averaging 29.5 against playoff opponents, scored 28 in that game. They were allowing 15 a game, gave up 14. And so, I mean, but the Ravens played the entire AFC playoff field just like the Chiefs. So that's what I kind of find fascinating in terms of that part of it. Then you take the other game with the Bills and Broncos. So the Bills is going to be skewed to a certain extent from a numbers perspective because the Bills were averaging 20 a game and giving up 26, but they played the Ravens, Texans, and Chiefs. And a lot of that's coming from the Ravens blowing them out of that game. But you take a look at the Broncos. The Broncos were averaging 14 a game and giving up 25.4. So more in line, with the 31, one off. So they scored a touchdown less and gave up a little bit more. So I don't know. I'm going to go look at their explosive plays and turnovers a little bit later to see where it fell in line and everything. But I don't know. There's some certain trends that it'll be interesting here in this next go around if it falls into place of what their average, what some of the teams' averages were or not.
Yeah, and I mean the Chiefs, and this comes back to what are you looking for in this Chiefs-Texan game, and how is it going to stack up? I mean, to me, one of the things is absolutely going to be the test, and the Texans. I mean, partly because the AFC South was so bad, and partly just because of, a little bit of randomness of the way the schedule fell. I mean, Texans had one playoff win, and they played the They played the Chiefs. They played Buffalo, and I'm talking about just during the regular season. I'm trying to remember who else pulled Ravens. There you go. I mean, they did not have a huge. They were just not tested much during the regular season, and I can't even say that beating the Chargers at home indoors is much of a test. They're gonna get tested, and the environment at Arrowhead on Saturday is not going to be what it was a month ago. It's going to be a different experience. And I'd have to look. I have not gone through. I know there's got to be a couple of Texans who are on that team. I don't know. Maybe there's more Chiefs that were on that Texans team that came to Arrowhead a few years ago. But it's we know that this Chiefs team is tested. Even if you want to set aside the playoff runs the last few seasons, the Chiefs played 9 games against playoff teams this year. Won 7 of them.
Yeah. So technically,
and one of them was
6-1 before. They were 6-1 before that final Denver game. So they ended up being 6-2. So eight times total they played playoff teams that made the playoffs in the AFC. And if you want to include the Buccaneers, then you can add that to the list.
Yeah. Oh, I'm definitely counting the Buccaneers. So
that's fine.
So to me, I mean, that's just another. I mean, the Texans. Hey. Convincing win. They should and will be coming to Kansas City with a great deal of confidence, but they're not dramatically different in any way, I don't think, than the team that we saw a few weeks ago. And offensively, you talk about scoring 32 points. I say, okay, 9 of those were defensive points because they had a pick 6 and they had a block 2, thanks to Cameron Dicker making the absolute worst play in the history of special teams that I think I've ever seen. I'm sure Dave Tobe will be priceless this week talking about that, because I'm sure, and I am sure also that every single team that's left in the playoffs is saying, hey, if an extra point gets blocked, just grab it and fall on it. Don't try and do anything stupid. Know the situation. And then they had another field goal that I believe was just 1-yard drive after the turnover. So, I mean, 12 points easily that you can put on that defense. And I mean, and we've talked about it, Tank Dell and the importance that he is to that team, as good as Nico Collins is, as good as Joe Mixon is, as good as CJ Stroud can be. They're much more 1- and 2-dimensional since I lost Tank Dell.
Yeah, 100%. All right. So if you're ready for the number, Matt, I looked it up for you.
Lay it on me.
All right. So Texans that are now on the Chiefs from that 2019 playoff game. Do you want to guess, or you just want me to tell you?
I mean, I'm guessing it's pretty low. I mean,
It's more than I thought, but it's not overwhelmingly.
All right, then I'm going to go with 6.
I counted 4.
Okay.
It was more than, like I said, it's more than I thought, but less than you would think. Okay, so
I did double my guess. I was thinking 3. So
DeAndre Hopkins is 1.
are you talking about there's Texans that are still on the Texans?
No, Texans that are now on the Chiefs that played.
Okay. Oh dear. Okay, I'm with you now.
Yeah. So it may actually be 3 here, but I'll run it by you and you'll see.
Okay.
DeAndre Hopkins.
Yep.
Justin Reed.
Yep. Those are the 2 I knew of for sure.
The third one is a sneaky one. Charles Omenihu.
Oh, there you go. Forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I'm trying to find I thought there was a 4th one, but there may only be 3. Yeah, no, I probably counted. No, he's not on the team anymore. Never mind. So no, it's it looks like 3. Yeah. So it's gonna be 3. DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Reed, and Charles Omenihu are from that team. How about that?
Imagine we'll hear quite a bit from those 3 guys this week about that game.
Because Roger Johnson, I don't remember if he was on the Chiefs practice squad for a minute or not. I can't remember anymore. He's not now. I know that. So,
and I mean, to me, there is at least you gotta have a conversation about what happened in that game because the Chiefs were coming off the bye. Chiefs were coming off the rest. Not as much rest as they've had coming into this game, but they had plenty of rest. And they fell behind 24-0, Nick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can come back from 24-0 twice. So I think the first lesson for the Chiefs is don't fall down 24-0 this week.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, luckily they got 3 guys that were on. They have guys on this roster that were on both ends of it. So that's the bonus you have on that front. Because the Chiefs team that year that are in that playoff game, that are still on this roster: Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, Derek Nottie, Mike Pennell. Then you have Harrison Butker, McCole Hardman. Let's see, James Winchester. So you're at 7 now, if I'm counting correctly. And he did not play that game, but is on the roster is Chris Jones.
And I'm telling you right now, I mean, I will be very, very disappointed in the Chiefs if they do not have Dan Sorensen banging the drum for this one. Just saying. Don't win that game without that dirty Dan Sorensen, Nick.
Yep. And the touchdown that got the party started for the Chiefs was a Damian Williams wheel route.
There you go. Yep, that's right.
And 3 consecutive Travis Kelce touchdowns, 2 more Damian Wilson touchdowns, and then capped it off with a Blake Bell touchdown and a Harrison Butker field goal.
We talked a little bit about this on Sunday Sound Off on 41, channel KSHB 41 earlier tonight, but didn't get to hear your take on it. But just kind of putting a button on the preview for Chiefs and Texans, what do the Chiefs need to guard against?
You gotta keep CJ Stroud struggling. Like you gotta hit him. You're gonna have to rattle him. That's number 1 thing you're gonna have to do. Number 2, you're going to have to keep Nico Collins in check. That's the one guy you got to take away. I mean, you do your best to keep Joe Mixon in check, but Nico Collins is the one you can't have running through your secondary, causing you problems because that's who gets CJ Stroud in rhythm, is him being out there on the football field. So like the Chiefs, that's the number 2 things. Hit Stroud, keep Collins in check. Don't let him account for him at all times, because if you let him run through your secondary, like you're gonna have some problems and you're gonna have a bad time, as I like to say. Because with Mixon, he only had 57 yards rushing last time they played. Stroud had those pressures, had that big hit from Joshua Williams at the end that really kind of ended that game. Tank Dell, I mean, he's not out there and everything, but the two guys the sneaky guy that was a part of it that really kind of caused them problems ended up being Schultz a couple times. That's actually the guy that kind of caused them a little bit of problem outside of Nico Collins, because at one point it was a three-headed monster to where Tank Dell was destroying him at 98 yards receiving, touchdown, and a touchdown coming off that injury on that deep pass. Then Nico Collins that they were trying to keep in check, 7 catches, 60 yards, had 10 targets though. And then Dalton Schultz, they had 8 targets for 5 receptions, 45 yards, and a TD. The TD was the push off that didn't get called in Trent McDuffie's favor, even though it should have been. I believe it was McDuffie that was guarding, but yeah, there was a push off there that didn't get called. But the Texans' offensive line back then, they were really struggling. Their guards were struggling. They couldn't pick up and pass off, and and that's where Chris Jones ended up having his calf injury. We didn't see him since then. It was in that fourth quarter. So I'm curious to see what a rested Chiefs defensive line can do. And, we'll see what happens whenever the Texans end up, if Deontay Johnson's even really a part of their game plan, or if they even have anything for him to potentially kind of, have an impact on the game in any way, shape, or form. Because I don't remember him yesterday in the game at all. And so that's not, did he even?
He was in the box score. I know that.
Yeah. Okay. He's number 82. So yeah, he was a substitution, but yeah, didn't really remember him being a part of too much of that game. So yeah, he had one catch for 12
yards.
Yeah. But Nico Collins, 7 catches, 122 yards and a TD. So
that's the guy you might want to keep an eye on. Yeah.
That's the guy you got to keep in check. And then I'm going to see what Schultz did real quick.
And probably once again, yeah. I'm expecting Trent McDuffie to see a lot of him on Saturday.
Yeah, I'm not going to discount that, but I think that's the first thing you got to kind of keep tabs on. Second thing will be what type of pressure are the Texans able to get in any way, shape, or form? Because Derek Stingley's a good cornerback, and he made him pay a couple of times. He made Herbert pay a couple of times, but they did a good job getting Herbert out of rhythm. So I'm kind of curious to see what the Chiefs can do to kind of run the ball, stay in a rhythm. Mahomes, how quickly he gets the ball out, what they do at left tackle and left guard. And it's just about the Chiefs coming out strong and being able to maintain and not have as many lulls. But you can't use the excuse that they haven't been well rested, because they've been as well rested as any team's going to possibly be this time of the year in these circumstances.
Yeah. And to me, watching how the Texans beat the Chargers, and if you're looking at what they did Saturday, or that they could replicate next Saturday, to me, it's what that defensive line was able to do, because they did get Justin Herbert out of rhythm, hit 4 sacks, 9 quarterback hits, and it was across the board. Mario Edwards had a good game. Denico Autry, Denico Autry is ancient, and he was out there making some big plays. And honestly, Daniel Hunter was a little bit quiet. Will Anderson had a big day, but you got to worry about, to me, that entire front four, because as good as Derek Stingley is, hey, Eric Murray is not getting a pick 6 without the guys up front doing their job. And I'm not even sure Stingley does as well as he does without the guys up front doing their job. So to me, especially because, especially looking at the Chargers, who have been so good with their tackles this season. And, we're big fans of both those guys. They did not have a good day against the Texans. They got beat a lot, and sometimes really badly. They had some bad miscommunications. Now, maybe that's not going to happen with the Chiefs, because they are a more experienced line, a little bit more chemistry. I think you're hoping that you won't just have some absolute whiffs, and maybe that's going to come back again to the discussion that we'll have this week about whether it's going to be DJ Humphries or Joe Thuney. What do you think, Nick? Do you think that the Chiefs should just go ahead and stick with Joe Thuney, or do you think that they can go with DJ Humphries and be okay there?
So, like we kind of talked about in the Q&A, I felt like DJ Humphries I just don't think he's comfortable with that leg. the one that the AC that he had the ACL, and I just don't see him putting complete faith and complete weight into that leg. And so there's times where it looks like he's favoring it a little bit still. And that may just be mentally, it may not be physically, but I still see a little hesitation and a little unsure in nature. It doesn't mean he didn't have the technique to succeed or be able to combat defenders and everything, but they've got to do what gets this offense going and puts his offense in the best position possible to win. And so I know the great debate that's happening is, well, if you don't have Joe Thuney at left guard, how are you going to be able to run the ball? And if you don't have and if you have DJ Humphries here and he struggles, what are you going to do? So, I mean, that's the question that the Chiefs offensive line coach, Andy Heck, and Andy Reid, the head coach, are going to have to answer together is what's the best pairing that gives them the chance? And do you give DJ Humphries the entire week, put him out there, and then if he struggles, then you can go back to Thuney, Caliendo like you essentially had the last time you faced the Texans, and it was able to work and be effective. So, I don't know. I'm interested to see what the Chiefs end up doing. I don't think there's a right answer from many of us that don't have access to practice every single day to be able to watch every single snap. And if the Chiefs want me to, just let me know, man. I'm not time for it. But I just don't, I don't know if there's definitively an answer that I can go with what information I have other than what I see in coaches film. Right now, I just see DJ Humphrey still not in sync, and that's to be expected because he hasn't played enough football in the past year to really be in a good rhythm like Joe Thuney is and like Caliendo is. But are you going to potentially risk some weaknesses in the run game? Yeah, you are. But maybe the rest for Kareem Hunt makes up that difference, and the rest for Pacheco makes up that difference. And looking at the numbers from the playoff game, time to throw for Herbert was 3.12. He got sacked 4 times, but he had 18 quarterback pressures, and he was pressured on 50% of his snaps. So that is less than ideal from that game.
That is suboptimal. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, if the Texans are able to get that kind of pressure on Mahomes, that's going to be a problem. But you mentioned the time to throw. The way that Patrick's been playing of late, he's going to be getting rid of the football faster than that. And that was part of the problem. I mean, Herbert was looking for a lot of big plays, holding onto the ball too long, and you can't do that. And Mahomes, to his credit, has not been doing that of late.
Yeah, and the Texans, that was week 16, right? I think it was week 16, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, because it was the first game in the second game in the stretch of 3 games in 11 days, so right before the Steelers.
Okay, so in that game against the Texans last time, Mahomes had 45 dropbacks, 16 quarterback pressures, so that's a pressure rate of 35.6, but his time to throw was 2.5, and that was Joe Thuney's second game at left tackle at that point, or filling in at left tackle, however you want to phrase it.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what the Chiefs choose to do. I mean, I could build a compelling case both ways. It wouldn't surprise me whichever direction that they go. And like you said, I mean, maybe the middle ground is you go with DJ Humphries, and if it's not working, you can always switch back to Joe Thuney. I mean, it's not necessarily the best way to go about that because that's going to be tough for an offensive lineman, but Joe Thuney can handle that. But I still, my final decision on it, if I'm Andy Reid, Andy Heck, decision I say is, Patrick, who are you more comfortable with?
100%.
Because that's essentially, this is the one time I'd be saying to my quarterback, you're making the decision here because we want you to be 100% comfortable with who's blocking your blind side.
Matt, you nailed it. That is the perfect answer. And I don't see them doing something that goes against what he feels comfortable and confident with on the football field.
Well, obviously, the Texans and the Chargers weren't the only AFC teams playing this week, Nick. We've got a couple of other games, and obviously, if the Chiefs win in the divisional round, one of the other winners that we saw on this weekend will be on the schedule down the road. Ravens-Steelers, Saturday night. Interesting one in that Ravens jumped out to a big lead. Everybody apparently on Twitter and X wants to fire Mike Tomlin, which think they're crazy, but the Steelers started to make maybe some inroads into it, and then the Ravens said, no, we're putting it away. Anything that stand out and surprised you in that ball game?
Nothing that really surprised me. I thought the Ravens would be pretty dominant and try to take the Steelers' will with the run game early on. I mean, the Steelers changed what they were doing in terms of how they were defending the run. I mean, early on, they were kind of crashing down there on a regular basis, really wanting to take Derrick Henry away. And Lamar was able to make him pay a handful of times. And then they just used their defensive line to kind of maintain the run game and kind of use their ends to discourage Lamar from, being able to try to keep the ball and try to take off with it. So there's that aspect to it. And then I think the Ravens are struggling without Zay Flowers out there. I know that sounds weird to say, but his explosiveness could, I think, ended that game a lot quicker than what it would have been. And so I'll be curious to see if Zay is able to make it back for the Buffalo Bills game on Sunday. And if he's able to play in that one, if he's 100% and what kind of difference he can make with knee sprain or whatever the heck they're calling it. And then, when you look at that Ravens offensive line, it's just interesting to see how far that Ravens offensive line's come under George Warhop, who was a potential candidate to be the original offensive line coach here in 2013, because Doug Peterson slipped up and said it on a phone call, but he was technically under a contract with the Cleveland Browns. So we never heard anything about that again. When Brad Childress was still under contract with the Browns, if I remember correctly, and it took a little bit till he got here on that coaching staff. But if you look, this is something that I'm going to be interested to watch in the weeks ahead. If you look at how far that Ravens offensive line's come from week 1 to now, and the continuity and the development of some of the younger guys and the chemistry that's developed between those guys, but then you look at the Chiefs offensive line, it gets a little frustrating to be like, why hasn't the Chiefs offensive line been able to get to that steady climb and that same trajectory that the Ravens have been able to? And the George Warhop's been able to coach into a player like Rosengardner, the tackle from Washington, versus the Chiefs struggling still with Wanya Morris in year 2 and, Kingsley Suamataia, where they've had to essentially kind of have him at guard. So I'm interested to kind of watch the Ravens in the week ahead, but that's a bigger question that I've kind of had from watching over the weekend and just watching how in sync the Baltimore Ravens O-line was. But what I will say for Pittsburgh, I just don't think a lot of that roster believes in Russell Wilson. And I think they were desperate for a spark. And George Pickens does not want to be on that team. And I don't think he wants Russell Wilson as his quarterback. I don't think he believes in Russell Wilson as quarterback. I think that creates a lot of conflict between the two of them. And so I just feel like there's a lot of division in that locker room because of that. I think that's what put them on their tailspin. And the reason I think people are calling for Mike Tomlin to either move on or to be fired or whatever, I think is because from the outside looking in, it looks like the message has gotten stale or that he doesn't have control of the locker room anymore. And either way, those are both bad problems for Pittsburgh, to where they're going to have to make a decision between moving on probably from Russell and what they want to do with George Pickens and letting Tomlin regain control of that locker room, or if somehow they're okay with that and then they want to let Tomlin move on. But if they let Tomlin move on, the first team that needs to call him the Chicago Bears, second one needs to be the Raiders. Because he could provide some serious stability for either one of them. But I would not wish the Jets on him. So.
No, I mean, you don't necessarily wish the Jets on anybody. Yeah. To me, I mean, it's amazing. And I heard, one talking head nationally, put it on saying, hey, the Steelers don't expect to go this long without playoff wins. Because I guess it's 8 years since their last playoff win. And all Mike Tomlin does is go to the playoffs. He doesn't win, playoff games right now. So that's why apparently the message is stale. This dude has taken a broken and damaged Ben Roethlisberger to the playoffs. He has taken, I can't even remember who the quarterback for the Steelers was 2 years ago that made it to the playoffs, Nick. He's been winning games with Kenny Pickett. He was winning games with Mitch Trubisky. Mm-hmm. He's been, and I was the lone person who thought that Russell Wilson might have a little juice left in him. And Mike Tomlin squeezed that juice out of him. He took Russell Wilson that everybody says is washed. He took him to the playoffs, Nick. So couldn't it be that if you, and I don't know how much control over drafting and personnel that Mike Tomlin has versus Omar Khan, but if your GM is the guy who drafted George Pickens, which we know we've talked about, Chiefs were never drafting George Pickens. And you have seen in the last 3 games why the Chiefs were not drafting George Pickens. He's not only apparently a team killer, but a quarterback killer too. I mean, there's plenty of reasons why. Mike Tomlin, if you got Mike Tomlin, Carson Wentz, I think he's going to win a playoff game. I mean, you just have to get him his quarterback. And if it's Mike Tomlin's fault that you don't have a quarterback and haven't drafted a good one, haven't been able to develop it, fine. Blame Mike Tomlin. If it's Omar Khan, who hasn't been able to do it, or you want to fire Mike Tomlin so that you can go 2-15 and have a top 3 pick and get your quarterback, that's a strategy. I'm not sure it's a winning strategy, but it's a strategy, I guess. So there's my free rant, non-Chiefs rant for you all about Mike Tomlin, because yes, I think the last thing, oh God, good grief, the last thing a Chiefs fan wants is Mike Tomlin in the AFC West with the Raiders. That would be, I mean, it'd be fun to watch those 4 coaches go at it every single year, but that would be the AFC West would be now the group of death.
I mean, you know, we keep workshopping the name. You gotta be able to sell it in promotions.
Here I am. I'm dropping World Cup references. You know, Nick, come on. I've all of a sudden I'm a soccer guy apparently.
Well, we all have our surprises.
Bottom line, and I will add one more thing that you mentioned it, that you know you expected the Ravens to commit to the run and put that game away. I felt that they probably would a little bit. I didn't, and maybe the Zay Flowers absence was the reason why, but I mean, I did not expect them to have Lamar Jackson run the ball 15 times, maybe not, you know, Derrick Henry 26 times. They exposed their 2 best playmakers to a lot of hits, and Lamar Jackson was feeling his back, it looked like, during that game, and that's not a good sign for the Ravens.
Yeah, he took a couple big shots, shoulder pads to the back of the ribs, and in that back area, and yeah, he felt that, and I guarantee he's feeling that today.
Well, Sunday's game in the AFC looked pretty exciting. Broncos were up 7-0, Nick, and then it was all Bills after that.
So I mean, look, the Broncos had a good opening drive. They recognized stuff in tape, and they weren't back deep enough on that post, and you know, they didn't expect Bo Nix to make big boy throws early on, and he made 2 really big throws that got him that opening drive. But then the Bills adjusted, and Bo Nix and the Broncos never had an answer the rest of the way. So, I mean, they did what they could to keep the game close and everything, but the Bills just have so many weapons that you need a fundamentally sound defense, and you need it working in tandem to keep Josh Allen in a certain way, to kind of limit James Cook, and then be able to cover the tight end combination, the receiver combinations that they have. For people that don't know, we're taping this at 1:30 in the morning right now.
Details. Yeah, Broncos had 70 yards on that opening drive, had 154 the rest of the game. Not optimal, especially when your defense that you leaned on all season gives up 471 yards. I mean, this was a pretty thorough, impressive performance from the Bills.
Yeah, I mean, it was. They did what they had to do, and they showed themselves to be the veteran playoff team when they pulled away there in the third quarter. Those veteran playoff teams know how to kind of pull away there in the second half, make the necessary adjustments to hold a team at bay, and then just be able to kind of take the will and take away the clock so that an opponent doesn't have enough time to really kind of create momentum, or to force some dumb turnovers that create momentum like it did for the Texans. So the Texans had a little bit more experience than the Chargers did. That's why that turned the way it did. The Bills have a lot more experience in clutch situations than Bo Nix and Sean Payton's Denver Broncos team does. And then the Ravens just have the right run game. And a lack of locker room problems that they can be able to, navigate through a playoff game and kind of just impose their will towards the end.
Well, we have a divisional round set, Nick. Chiefs will open it up on Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Central Time, with the Texans coming to town. Saturday night, Washington will go to Detroit for a 7 o'clock kickoff. And then Sunday wraps it all up. Either the Vikings or the Rams, whoever comes out of State Farm Stadium in Phoenix, will go to Philadelphia for a 2 o'clock kickoff. And 5:30 Sunday will be that's the marquee game. That's the one that I think is going to be billed as the game of the week. Baltimore at Buffalo. Early favorites for you from any of those games?
Well, obviously, I'm expecting the Chiefs to be able to win the Texans game. I think the Washington used up what they had magic-wise. So I think the Lions will handle them pretty comfortably. I'm personally expecting the Rams to move on. And I think the Rams will give the Eagles their best shot. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to end up being Eagles and Lions in that front. And that Ravens-Bills game is going to be really, really interesting. I think the Ravens are going to need Zay Flowers. And I think the Ravens are going to be able to run in a way that's going to cause the Bills a lot of problems. And the Bills are going to have to be able to really kind of stretch out that Ravens secondary and really attack that and kind of be able to maintain a certain steady progression in their drives and try to limit how much the Ravens can use Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson for body blow after body blow and take advantage in the fourth quarter when it matters. So it's just going to be interesting to see that balancing act between the two teams because, the Bills have more weapons on offense and they can hang with the Ravens, but it's a matter of if the Ravens are willing to be consistent with their run game, and if they have Zay Flowers, that'll help a great deal. So I know the Bills will be able to remember how much the Ravens ran on them in the regular season, and just how out of whack that game was. Because a part of that was they didn't have Amari Cooper, and they were still navigating who they were as a football team. Back then, actually, no, I don't think they played the Ravens. So I'm probably thinking of the Texans.
Yep.
The Texans the Texans had a tough game against. The Texans had a bad game against the Ravens. Boy, the Ravens going in there against the nickel defense like that. And just the size wise, that's what Harbaugh is going to be leaning on to try to really kind of impose their will in that game, keep Josh Allen on the sidelines. And if you're if you're just watching this from afar, you'd really would have liked the Bills to have had experienced that already this season before they got to this. Because the Ravens, I think, are going to take a lot out of what the Rams did and how the Rams remained steady with how they ran the ball in that game. They were okay with getting 3 to 4 yards a clip, but they knew they had to keep maintaining to do that. The Broncos tried to do that in this Sunday game, but they gave up on it once they were down by a certain score and were unwilling to stay with it and just weren't able to kind of really control that line of scrimmage. And Ed Oliver just really kind of took over in some spots in that game, and sometimes maybe kind of crossed the line a little bit quicker than what he did, than what he should have. But yeah, that's not ideal. That's really not ideal. Think about it.
I'm with you on the first 3 games. Obviously, I think the Chiefs advance. If the Commanders play the way that they did Sunday night, I know they beat the Bucs, but they play like that against the Lions. It's not going to get the job done. So I think the Lions pull that one out. I think the Eagles will advance. Baltimore and Buffalo, I keep going back and forth. It's a 50-50 game to me. I keep leaning on the last thing that comes to me is just, I was talking about it with the Chiefs and the Texans and the Chargers. Who is the most battle tested? And honestly, this season, it's the Ravens. And you look at what they have done against playoff teams this season, they are a totally different team when the lights are on. And they were obviously an inch away from beating the Chiefs in week 1. So I think the Ravens are the teams that you do not want to face if you're the Chiefs. I think you'd like a second chance at Buffalo, but Right now, I think I would give the slight edge to the Ravens. I know the Bills are a 1.5 point favorite, but that even tells you that the bettors think that this is a dead even game too, because that's pretty much a home point advantage, a home field advantage. One
Matt,
other thing,
I wasn't crazy.
You weren't crazy?
The Bills did play the Ravens in Week 4.
There you go.
Ravens won.
You're never crazy.
Ravens won 35-10. Derrick Henry had 199 yards rushing and 24 carries. Lamar had 54 yards rushing, and they completely wrecked them in Baltimore.
Now it's the revenge game in Buffalo.
So so strike what we said earlier. No, like the fact they have played them. Buffalo's they at least have tape to see where they were bad in their run fits, and they didn't have Milano in that game. I think he came back later in the year around the time when they played the Chiefs. So they at least have that to work with. But I mean, the Ravens are going to add a little extra sauce to it, and expectation wise, I wouldn't be stunned to see a Chiefs-Ravens AFC Championship game. Selfishly, I want to see the Chiefs get another chance at Buffalo. I just want to see Chiefs-Bills for some reason. I just want to see that good of a game, see if Josh Allen's going to get over that hump or if the Chiefs can get their three-peat. But no, either way, the Chiefs are going to be playing. If the Chiefs can beat the Texans, they're going to be playing a quality team in the AFC Championship, and maybe arguably one of the best teams they're going to play in the AFC Championship game at Arrowhead. And probably one of the tougher challenges in quite some time. I mean, the Bengals game, I just don't think that Bengals team is. I don't think that Bengals team's kind of where the Ravens and Bills are this year, but I could be wrong.
I don't know. The Bills and Ravens this year are pretty good. Then Buffalo's, I think, at least, in the ballpark and level with the Buffalo team was here in the AFC Championship game. So
yeah, let's rank the teams that were here. Let's rank the teams that were here in the AFC Championship game. So you got the Patriots with Brady in 18. You've got the Titans in 19. 2020, you got the Bills.
Yep.
That year with Josh Allen, a much younger, immature Josh Allen that really wasn't willing to, he wasn't really, he was always going to try to score. He was a little bit too stubborn for his own ability at times. And I don't think he's the same way. Then, they get the Bengals here that they lost to in 2021. Then you got the Bengals that they beat here in 2022. And then last year you went on the road and beat the Ravens. Then, like I said, you had the Titans in 2019 with Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry.
Yeah. And that would be, to me, the worst. I would rank that as the last team. Am I crazy?
No. Vrabel had him.
I love Mike Vrabel. There was no doubt. That was a heck of a coaching job. I love me some Mike Vrabel. That's going to be a problem in New England to see what he's going to be a problem.
Especially for the Bills. The Bills in a couple of years, they're going to have a roster that's ready for his level of toughness he's going to bring.
No doubt about that. I'm just trying to decide between, they won a Super Bowl, so I think you have to put the Patriots at the top, right?
Yeah.
Patriots.
We'll see what happens here in the next couple of weeks if the Chiefs make it to the AFC Championship game like that. The Ravens, Bills, I could potentially rival it.
I'm just trying to decide between the 21 and 22. 22 Bills had a better record, so I probably would put them ahead of the 21 Bills. And honestly, I think I'd put the 22 and 21 Bills ahead of both of the Bengals teams.
Okay.
And the Ravens, gosh, I think I'd put the Ravens ahead of the Bengals teams too. So call me a Bengals hater, but
yeah,
I think that's my order. Which way do you go?
Because the fact they had Tom Brady, that 18 Patriots team, they just had the will, the experience of being in that moment. So right now I'd consider them at the very top, and then if I had to go with number 2 at that point, I would think I don't know, that Bengals team was pretty good in that 2021 that went on to go to the Super Bowl. They Lou Anarumo and that defense, just kind of the way they manipulated it, that there was a lot of promise there, but that
I still feel like the Chiefs lost that game more than the Bengals won it.
Maybe so, but I mean, the Bengals are finding their way at that point, so they may have stumbled into that one. But I would definitely put that Bengals team in the top, at minimum in the top, potentially top 3. Titans, yeah, I would definitely consider the worst. The Bills team didn't have as much firepower in that 2020 year, and so like the Chiefs were able to kind of comfortably take that away from them and really kind of rattle Josh Allen in that year. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anybody else I'm missing, because I mean, that Ravens team last year was pretty good. They just didn't. Lamar just kind of short-circuited, and you're really kind of seeing if he's going to short-circuit in Buffalo or in Kansas City, or if he can potentially make his way to a Super Bowl, or if Josh Allen can make his way to the first Super Bowl and get over, if either one gets over the Chiefs hump, potentially, if the Chiefs are in the AFC Championship game. So a lot of interesting storylines there.
Indeed, there are. I do have one bonus question for you, Nick, because the podcast isn't long enough yet, apparently. More interest this year than there has been in years past in some Chiefs maybe going on to greener pastures, new jobs at least. Steve Spagnuolo, Matt Nagy, Mike Borgonzi, all getting interviews around the league. What do you see? You see any good fit? Do you see that there might be a landing spot for one or more of these guys?
Yeah, so I mean, the fact that Steve Spagnuolo and Matt Nagy both interviewed with the Jets and Borgonzi interviewed there too just kind of gives me the feeling that the Jets are wanting to put a GM and head coaching combo together that has the same philosophy and can work well together. So it wouldn't stun me if the Chiefs do lose any of those guys. I just feel like it's going to be Borgonzi paired with either Nagy or Steve Spagnuolo in like New York. Because I mean, like that's the primary reason you do that, or maybe a Liam Cohen combination with the Bucs GM that they enter, or the Bucs guy that's a GM candidate for the Jets. But with the Bucs losing, that opens it up. If they did want to go down that route, they don't really have to wait on the Chiefs season to potentially end if that's the road they want to go. And I think Liam Cohen's going to be a pretty hot commodity for a head coaching job somewhere here, whether that's with the Bears or if that's with the Raiders. I think the Raiders is probably a smart landing spot. The Jets would be a good landing spot for him as long as they have a personnel person that matches what he wants philosophically, because I think Liam Cohen, what he did down there with the Bucs this year, after injuries, before injuries, but even after injuries, like he made some guys like Cade Otton and Bucky Irving and some other guys, like he took the best of their ability and really emphasized it and used it to a way to where they were able to win their division, have a really good game in the wild card round, and I just think he can maximize a roster in a way some of the other head coaching candidates may not be able to. So that's kind of the primary spot. The Titans thing, I don't want to see Michael Borgonzi take, because it feels like it's an assistant general manager role with what you've seen in there. And if I remember correctly, I read somewhere the NFL is going to be investigating that isn't actually an assistant GM job with the roles. So it'll be interesting to see what that turns up and everything. So and there's not really a lot of other GM jobs out there. The Saints gig, I just think Mickey Loomis wants somebody that's comfortable and will just kind of stick with the status quo, not rock the boat for him, except that he always puts him in awful cap situations and just kind of ride the wave. And Jaguars wise, I wouldn't wish it on him, because I just don't think the GM's a good pairing with whoever comes in there as head coach. So I think the Jaguars are going to go with somebody that's more desperate to either stay in the league or is desperate to become a head coach and really wants to take the shot, even though the situation's not what's going to be best for them.
Yeah, I don't begrudge anybody for taking a job, but there are times that it feels like maybe you're better off waiting for a better opportunity, and I get not wanting to miss your chance. So that's why I said I'm not going to begrudge anybody who gets offered a job that I think is a bad job if they're fearful that maybe this is their one chance, and that maybe if they bypass this, they won't get a chance to do the job, or if they're confident that they feel like that they can do it. I feel like I still feel like that what held Matt Nagy back and hurt him in Chicago was that I feel like he gave the answer that got him the job, which was, can you win with Mitch Trubisky? Mm-hmm. And he said, hey, I can embrace this quarterback. I can take him. I can coach him. Better answer probably would have been said, no, I need my own quarterback. So if that didn't get him the job, maybe that would have been okay. Because you're a coach, you need your quarterback. You can't just get paired with somebody else's choice and have that be what defines you as a coach. And that's what happened to Matt Nagy. I'm with you. I mean, Jacksonville, I wouldn't wish on anybody. That's the job both jobs that I'm like, no, don't. I don't know what the Raiders are going to do. I mean, I would not want to see Steve Spagnuolo in Las Vegas, though, because I think he could actually maybe he would be a good coach for, I think, that setting, because I think he's got that same kind of Raider mentality. I think he could be that tough guy that they want. Whether you can fix the culture of that whole organization, I'm not sure. I'm not sure anybody can, and maybe Tom Brady can, but Tom Brady may have his own choices about who he wants. I will say I'm a little bit more lenient on the Jets job, and I'm only if Mike Borgonzi goes there, because I think Mike Borgonzi would be a really good fit. He's a Northeast guy. I think he would fit in well. I think he would handle all of it. He is not he's not somebody who's going to be the fire in New York that's just going to electrify things, which I think is what they need. I think they need a competent general manager. I don't think they need, the last showman. They don't. That's not what they need. Yeah. They need somebody who's just competent and can, help you build a culture. And like you said, I mean, if he actually went there with somebody like Matt Nagy or Steve Spagnuolo, could actually work for me. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. I mean, I think all three of those guys, obviously, I think they've earned it. I think they have chances to do well if they get to the right spot. I mean, I still, looking back, if you ever want to go back and look at what happened to Spags in St. Louis, that was just, I mean, one, he built a really good defense and he found some really good players and developed the heck out of them. It was just that he was straddled with an offense that he could not fix, and nobody could have fixed that offense because they brought in Josh McDaniels and he created the worst offense in the history of the modern NFL.
Yeah, it happens sometimes.
Well, we've not taken quite an hour of all your times this week, so hopefully you didn't have to spend, listen to this entire thing on 1.5 speed. But if you did, more power to you. I appreciate you. Thank you for making it to the end. Do we have any Easter eggs for everybody who made it to the end, Nick?
No, I think we're about out of time. I apologize to Matt Damon.
We apologize to Matt Damon. We don't have time for him. All right, everybody. Tuesday night, live Q&A. You will be here with us back to a normal schedule. And then next Saturday, sometime after the divisional round game, we'll catch you up on everything that happened and let you know what have going on behind the scenes and all of that fun stuff, and breaking down what obviously everybody hopes will be a Chiefs win, Nick.
That's right, Matt. So until next time, deuces.
You've been listening to 41 is the Mic, presented by KSHB 41, your home of the Chiefs and Chiefs Digest.